Ladies and gentlemen, what is unfolding in the heart of the California desert right now is not just a tennis storyline, it is a cultural eruption. Something extraordinary is happening at Indian Wells, and the shockwaves are rippling far beyond the boundaries of the tennis court. The atmosphere has shifted. The energy feels different. The crowd is louder. The tension is thicker. And at the center of it all stands one young Filipina who has turned a prestigious American tournament into the epicenter of a global awakening. If you think this is just another WTA event, stay with me because what you're about to witness could redefine the sport's future. Indian Wells, often called the fifth Grand Slam, has always been known for elegance, tradition, and a composed, almost refined crowd. Spectators usually sit quietly beneath the desert sun, applauding politely after brilliant rallies. It has long been a sanctuary for tennis purists. But today, that calm sophistication has been replaced by thunder. Interstate 10 has transformed into a parade route. Traffic stretches for miles, not with tourists or casual weekend visitors, but with vehicles proudly displaying the colors of the Philippine flag. Blue, red, white, and yellow wave in the desert wind. This isn't coincidence. This is mobilization. And it's only getting bigger. As thousands pour into the Indian Wells tennis garden, something unprecedented is taking shape. Entire sections of the stadium are filling with chanting fans. Drums echo through the grounds. Vendors are selling out of merchandise at record speed. Practice courts are packed shoulder to shoulder with supporters desperate for even a glimpse of her warm-up routine. And if you're wondering who could inspire such a phenomenon, don't click away. Because the answer is more powerful than you imagine. Her name is Alexandra Eala. And she is not simply competing. She is carrying a nation. For those unfamiliar with her journey, here's what makes this moment historic. Born in Quezon City, she dared to chase a dream few from her region have ever pursued at the highest level. As a young teenager, she left home to train thousands of miles away in Spain at the legendary Rafa Nadal Academy. That decision alone required courage most adults would struggle to summon. She wasn't just moving schools, she was stepping into the unknown, into a world dominated by European and American systems. And she didn't just survive there. She thrived. She became the first Filipino player in history to capture a junior Grand Slam singles title at the US Open. That achievement sent shockwaves through Southeast Asia. But here's where the story becomes even more gripping. Junior success guarantees nothing in professional tennis. The leap to the WTA Tour can swallow young talent whole. The competition is ruthless. The travel is relentless. The pressure is suffocating. Many promising careers fade during this transition. So what makes this different? What makes this different is resilience. Eala fought through lower-tier ITF events in quiet corners of the globe, grinding for ranking points without cameras or roaring crowds. She battled on empty courts where only a handful of spectators watched. She endured losses. She adjusted. She sharpened her game. And now she has arrived at Indian Wells not as an undercard prospect, but as a headline attraction. If you're still watching, ask yourself this. When was the last time a WTA player transformed a tournament's entire demographic overnight? Exactly. This is rare. The Filipino-American community across Southern California from Los Angeles to San Diego has rallied with unmatched intensity. This isn't passive support. It is emotional investment. Families have organized caravans. Community groups purchased tickets in bulk. Secondary markets have been overwhelmed. The stadium no longer feels neutral. It feels claimed. And the establishment did not see this coming. Tournament officials are scrambling to adjust to crowd levels they never anticipated. Security presence has increased. Vendors are rushing restocks. Broadcasters are repositioning cameras to capture the sea of flags. The quiet murmur that once defined Indian Wells has been replaced by rhythmic chants echoing through the desert air. It resembles a Davis Cup final more than a mid-round WTA match. And here's the twist: this is only the beginning. But why such passion? Why this level of devotion? Because for over 100 million Filipinos worldwide, Alexandra Eala represents possibility. She symbolizes access to a stage historically dominated by others. For decades, Southeast Asia has remained on the fringes of elite tennis. While nations like Japan and China have produced Grand Slam champions, the Philippines has waited for its breakthrough moment. That moment might be now. And if you think this energy will fade after one match, think again. This is deeper than sport. It's about visibility. It's about diaspora pride. It's about a young girl from Manila daring to stand, shoulder to shoulder, with the world's elite. Every forehand she strikes feels like a statement. Every game she wins echoes across time zones. And if you're tempted to think this is hype, stay right here. Because in the next part, we are breaking down the technical brilliance behind the phenomenon. We are analyzing why her playing style is perfectly engineered for Indian Wells conditions. We are diving into the psychological warfare her opponents must endure facing a stadium that feels anything but neutral. What's happening in California isn't random. It's a convergence: talent meeting timing, culture meeting opportunity, preparation meeting destiny. And as the desert sun sets over the tennis garden, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The establishment is on notice. A new force has stepped onto the stage, and she didn't come alone. Stay with me, because this story is only accelerating. Now, let's go deeper, because what you're seeing on the surface, the flags, the noise, the emotional surge, is only half the story. The real intrigue lies inside the white lines of the court. Because here's the truth. Passion can energize a player, but it cannot replace skill. And Alexandra Eala's rise is not built on emotion alone. It is constructed on a technical foundation so precise, so carefully refined, that Indian Wells might actually be the perfect stage for her breakthrough. If you think this is just a crowd-fueled moment, don't move, because once we dissect her game, everything starts to make sense. First, the left-handed advantage. In modern tennis, being a lefty instantly changes geometry. Angles open up that right-handed opponents rarely practice against. On the ad side, her serve swings wide with a natural curve, dragging opponents off the court and exposing open space on the next shot. It's not just placement, it's architecture. She builds points like a chess master, one calculated move at a time. And under the guidance of the Rafa Nadal Academy, that serve has evolved into a strategic weapon, rather than a simple starting shot. But that's only the beginning. Her forehand is where desert conditions become her ally. Indian Wells is famous for its slower hard courts and higher bounce. The gritty surface grips the ball, exaggerating topspin. And Eala's forehand is loaded with it. The ball doesn't just travel, it explodes upward off the court, kicking into uncomfortable strike zones and forcing opponents to retreat behind the baseline. It's a pattern reminiscent of the heavy, grinding style perfected by players who thrive in extended rallies. But if you're expecting her to be predictable, here's the twist: she isn't. Her two-handed backhand slices through rallies with a flatter, more penetrating trajectory. While her forehand pushes opponents back, her backhand finishes the job. Down-the-line winners arrive suddenly, redirecting pace with stunning precision. That contrast-heavy spin on one wing, laser-like drive on the other, makes her tactically unpredictable. She can stretch rallies into endurance battles or shorten them with early ball striking. And at Indian Wells, where patience is often rewarded, that versatility becomes lethal. Now imagine facing that combination, while thousands of fans erupt after every winner. Imagine preparing to serve while chants echo through the stadium. Tennis is often described as a lonely sport. There is no sideline coaching midpoint, no teammates to share momentum. When pressure builds, players confront it alone. But what happens when one competitor feels backed by an entire nation? Momentum stops being neutral. It becomes tilted. And that psychological edge might be just as significant as her forehand spin. Stay with this thought, because this is where things get fascinating. The women's tour is currently in a transitional era. Dominant figures like Iga Swiatek have set a standard with relentless movement and topspin precision, while power hitters such as Aryna Sabalenka and Elena Rybakina can blast opponents off the court with sheer force. But beneath that top tier lies volatility. Rankings shift weekly. Breakthroughs happen suddenly. The gap between established names and hungry contenders is thinner than ever. And that volatility creates opportunity. Eala doesn't fit neatly into one category. She isn't purely a counterpuncher. She isn't solely a power striker. She adapts. Against heavy hitters, she absorbs pace and redirects angles. Against grinders, she accelerates tempo and steps inside the baseline. This adaptability makes scouting her difficult. Opponents cannot rely on a single blueprint. And in a tournament as stacked as Indian Wells, unpredictability is priceless. But here's where the challenge intensifies. The draw is unforgiving. Early rounds feature seasoned veterans capable of exposing inexperience. Later rounds demand physical endurance few young players possess. Desert conditions drain stamina. Long rallies become tests of lung capacity and leg strength. Every match becomes a mental examination as much as a physical one. So, the question becomes, can she sustain this level under mounting expectation? Before you answer that, consider her upbringing. From her teenage years, she was labeled the future of Philippine tennis. Every junior triumph made national headlines. Every setback was dissected publicly. That environment forges maturity. When you grow up knowing millions are watching, pressure becomes familiar. It stops feeling like an enemy. It transforms into fuel. And that composure shows in key moments. Watch her body language at break point. No rushed motions. No frantic glances. She follows routine bounce, breathe, commit. That rhythm stabilizes her under stress. Many rising players possess explosive talent but crumble when momentum shifts. Eala, by contrast, appears anchored. And in a tournament where matches can swing on a single game, emotional stability is priceless. Now let's widen the lens beyond tactics. Because what's happening here extends far beyond rankings and prize money. The Women's Tennis Association has long aimed to deepen its presence across Asia. Countries like Japan and China have delivered champions and hosted major events. But Southeast Asia remains largely untapped territory, and that's where this story gains even more weight. If Eala makes a deep run here, the broadcast impact alone will be monumental. Primetime coverage in Manila. Surging youth participation inquiries. Sponsors recalculating regional strategies. Brands searching for ambassadors who bridge Western training with Southeast Asian identity. She represents a commercial and cultural gateway. And tournaments recognize that value immediately. Crowds translate to revenue. Revenue fuels expansion. Expansion reshapes the sport's global footprint. And don't underestimate diaspora influence. The Filipino-American community in California is one of the largest outside the Philippines. Their mobilization demonstrates purchasing power and engagement. It proves that representation converts into attendance. That message resonates in boardrooms. If you think tournament executives aren't analyzing these ticket sales carefully, think again. But here's the real turning point. Regardless of how far she advances, something irreversible has already occurred. The atmosphere at Indian Wells has been permanently altered. Players stepping onto court against her no longer experience a neutral venue. They face a wall of sound. They feel emotional resistance. And over time, that kind of environment shapes results. Crowds have rescued champions from the brink of defeat before. They have injected exhausted athletes with second wins. Could that happen here? We are about to find out. So don't step away now. Because in the final part, we are breaking down the broader cultural earthquake this moment could trigger, from grassroots courts in Manila to global sponsorship shifts, from family sacrifice to legacy building. The desert takeover is not the climax, it is the ignition. And what comes next could redefine the global balance of tennis power. Stay right here. The final chapter is where everything converges. Now we arrive at the part of this story that stretches far beyond scorelines and statistics, because what is happening in the California desert is bigger than a single tournament run. This is about legacy in motion. This is about the moment a door cracks open for an entire region that has been waiting patiently on the outside of tennis's most exclusive rooms. And whether Alexandra Eala lifts a trophy here or not, something irreversible has already begun. If you zoom out from the roaring sections of fans inside the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, you start to see the larger ripple effect. Back in Manila, Cebu, and across the Philippine Islands, televisions are tuned in at unusual hours. Young players are watching not just for entertainment, but for validation. For decades, tennis in Southeast Asia has battled financial limitations, scarce public facilities, and minimal international exposure. Equipment is expensive. Court time is limited. Overseas competition requires resources most families simply do not have. But visibility changes belief, and belief changes behavior. The Philippines has experienced this phenomenon before through icons like Manny Pacquiao, whose fights once brought an entire nation to a standstill. Streets emptied, businesses paused. Collective attention focused on one athlete representing millions. That same emotional current is beginning to flow through tennis. Eala is not just winning points, she is expanding imagination. And when imagination expands, participation follows. Tennis academies will see enrollment inquiries increase. Local federations will feel pressure to invest more deeply. Private sponsors who once hesitated may now recognize untapped potential. If you think this is temporary excitement, consider how grassroots revolutions begin. They start with a symbol, and symbols require support systems. Behind every forehand winner is a network of sacrifice rarely visible to the public eye. The decision to leave home at a young age and train in Spain at the Rafa Nadal Academy was not simply a career move, it was a family leap of faith. Relocation, financial strain, emotional distance, these are burdens shared quietly. Professional tennis might appear individualistic, but success is collective. Coaches refine technique. Physiotherapists preserve longevity. Parents absorb uncertainty. When Eala walks onto court surrounded by Filipino flags, she carries not only national expectation but personal gratitude. This is where the narrative becomes even more compelling. Representation at this level does not just influence aspiring athletes. It reshapes corporate strategy. Global brands constantly search for authentic ambassadors who bridge cultures. A multilingual, internationally trained athlete with deep Southeast Asian roots represents a rare intersection of markets. Sponsorship boards notice crowd demographics. Broadcast executives analyze engagement spikes. Tournament organizers evaluate ticket surges. The message radiating from Indian Wells is clear. Southeast Asia is not a passive audience, it is an activated one. And if you're still here, consider this question carefully. What happens if she makes a semifinal run? What if she topples a seated veteran under that wall of sound? Momentum in sports is rarely linear. Breakthrough weeks create ranking leaps. Ranking leaps open main draw entries. Main draws build experience. Experience fuels confidence. Confidence sustains consistency. The trajectory can accelerate quickly. And in a women's tour currently defined by depth and unpredictability, opportunity is always one inspired performance away. But even in the scenario where her run ends earlier than fans hope, the psychological barrier has already been shattered. Opponents have felt the crowd surge. Officials have adjusted to new energy. Broadcasters have captured viral imagery of a tournament transformed. The establishment has witnessed firsthand what diaspora passion looks like when activated. That cannot be unseen. It will influence future scheduling decisions, marketing campaigns, and developmental outreach across the region. Indian Wells will be remembered not just for champions crowned, but for atmospheres created. For the day when chants in Tagalog echoed beneath desert skies. For the visual of thousands standing unified behind one athlete. For the realization that tennis, often labeled exclusive and restrained, can pulse with raw, communal intensity. And here is the most important truth of all. This story is still being written. The next serve she strikes could swing momentum. The next tiebreak could define a season. The next handshake at the net could signal the closing of one chapter and the explosive beginning of another. That unpredictability is why we watch. That anticipation is why we stay. Because you are not just observing matches, you are witnessing emergence. So, wherever you are following this from, understand the scale of what you are seeing. A young woman from Quezon City has stepped onto one of tennis's grandest stages and altered its rhythm. She has proven that talent combined with courage can redraw geographic boundaries. She has demonstrated that national pride can travel across oceans and fill stadiums. And as the desert lights glow brighter each evening, one certainty remains. The heartbeat of Indian Wells sounds different now. And it may never return to what it once was.